In the bustling factories of China, a palpable sense of panic gripped producers as a staggering 145% tariff, levied by President Trump, sent shockwaves through the global supply chain. American import orders vanished almost overnight, leaving countless Chinese manufacturing plants, like one shoe factory, with towering stacks of unsold inventory reaching dangerously close to the ceiling. The immediate economic fallout was severe, forcing many operations to grind to a halt. Yet, within a mere few weeks, an unexpected reprieve arrived. Trump agreed to a temporary 90-day pause on the majority of these punitive tariffs. This decision offered a breath of fresh air for both American consumers and their Chinese counterparts. During this 3-month window, the tariffs wouldn't disappear entirely, but rather plummet to a still substantial 30%. While this figure represents a dramatic reduction from the initial 145%, it remains exceptionally high by conventional trade standards, almost certainly portending significant disruptions for China's annual exports to the US, a trade relationship valued at nearly $500 billion. The true cost of this trade war, however, extends far beyond simple economic figures, as we will later uncover the extent to which it has exposed deep-seated vulnerabilities within China's export-driven model. America, however, is not the sole trade partner causing Beijing concern. A growing number of nations, including many developing economies, have expressed increasing apprehension regarding China's industrial overcapacity, which poses an overwhelming competitive challenge to their own domestic industries. This sentiment recently led both Indonesia and Vietnam to outright ban the Chinese e-commerce platform, Tmoo, citing this very issue. The European Union is also actively considering an increase in its tariffs on Chinese goods, partly driven by fears that American tariffs will compel Chinese exporters to flood other global markets with their products at ever-decreasing prices. This confluence of challenges arrives at a particularly inopportune moment for the world's second-largest economy. Despite official statistics proclaiming robust annual growth of approximately 5%, underlying economic difficulties are undeniably surfacing. Most troubling among these is the alarming youth unemployment rate, which has now reached 17%. This video will delve into how the recent trade disputes have laid bare the inherent weaknesses in China's reliance on exports, and explore potential solutions, if any, for these systemic issues. The emerging era of protectionism is poised to trigger monumental shifts across the global economy and within financial markets, creating both winners and losers among thousands of publicly traded companies. Identifying these winners requires sophisticated analytical tools. My preferred resource for this task is Investing Pro, the cutting-edge offering from investing.com. This powerful, AI-driven platform provides instant access to a wealth of financial data and insights. One of its most remarkable features is Warren AI, which functions as an investment-focused version of a conversational AI. Its superiority to general AI tools lies in its direct integration with investing.com's comprehensive data, ensuring the most current and precise market intelligence. For example, I recently tasked it with identifying a US-based manufacturing firm poised to benefit from Trump's China tariffs. It swiftly pinpointed Powell Industries, a prominent producer of electrical equipment. When I requested more detailed information and recent financial performance, Warren AI furnished a comprehensive company description, outlining its operations and consolidating a vast array of financial data into easily digestible observations. Without Warren AI's unique insights, this company would have remained off my radar, making it an indispensable starting point for any serious investment research. We have partnered with investing.com to offer you a 15% discount on your initial Investing Pro subscription. Simply follow the link provided in the video description to get started today. Now, let's return to our main topic. Let's begin by examining the current landscape of the US-China trade conflict. Back in 2018, during his initial presidential term, Trump had already imposed tariffs on China, though these were confined to specific product categories such as solar panels, washing machines, steel, and aluminum. These earlier tariffs ranged from 15% to 25% and largely remain in effect today. Furthermore, in late 2024, the Biden administration introduced a steep 100% tariff on Chinese electric vehicles, effectively preventing their sale in the United States. Now, a 30% tariff applies to nearly all Chinese imports, with a minor exception for smartphones and computers, which face a slightly lower 20% tariff. A second significant policy shift involves the elimination of the de minimis exception. Previously, packages shipped into the US with a declared value under $800 were entirely exempt from any tariffs. This provision greatly benefited Chinese e-commerce giants like Shein and Tmoo. Trump's recent decision to abolish this exception means these small packages are now subject to a higher 54% tariff. Alternatively, importers can opt to pay a flat fee of $100, which, for a package valued at $799.99, could effectively lower the tariff rate to approximately 12.5%. These new regulations are expected to have a devastating impact on both Tmoo and Shein. The sheer number and complexity of tariffs, spanning various product categories and having undergone numerous adjustments, can be difficult to track. To simplify, it boils down to this: until recently, most Chinese products faced zero tariffs. Now, all Chinese products are subject to tariffs ranging from 20% to a staggering 100%. The fundamental question remains: what is the ultimate goal of these measures, and how severely will they impact China? In 2024, China exported goods worth $440 billion to the United States, a figure almost certainly destined for substantial decline. However, China's reliance on U.S. trade has already been diminishing. Prior to 2018, North America accounted for just over 18% of China's total exports. By 2023, this proportion had decreased to 14%. Data for 2024 is not yet available. This reduction can be partly attributed to Trump's 2018 tariffs, but another contributing factor is the increasing appetite for Chinese products from other nations. Looking back to 2016, the majority of China's exports were directed towards three key regions: North America, East Asia, and Western Europe. This pattern was unsurprising, as these regions encompass most of the developed economies, such as the United States, Britain, Germany, and Japan. Consumers in these wealthy countries possessed the purchasing power to acquire a substantial volume of Chinese-made goods. In 2016, these three developed regions were responsible for 56% of China's total exports. By 2023, this share had fallen to just 46%. The so-called developing world is becoming increasingly crucial to China's export strategy. Southeast Asia's share of Chinese exports grew from 11% to 14%. South and Central America saw an increase from 5% to 7%. The Middle East, Central Asia, and Eastern Europe collectively rose from 9% to 13%. These latter three regions are grouped together due to the similar nature of their trading relationships with China. The Middle East, Russia, and Central Asia possess vast reserves of oil, natural gas, and other minerals, which they export to China in significant quantities. Lacking extensive manufacturing capabilities, they are content to exchange natural resources for Chinese goods. Now, let's shift our focus to South America and Southeast Asia. While these regions are relatively less affluent, their economies are experiencing rapid growth from a smaller base. As incomes in these countries rise, their populations can increasingly afford to purchase more Chinese products. Another significant factor is the dramatic rise of Chinese automobiles, particularly electric vehicles. In 2016, China imported roughly the same number of cars as it exported. Over the subsequent 6 years, imports declined, while exports skyrocketed. In 2023, China recorded a net vehicle export surplus of $160 billion. This growth has primarily originated from regions such as South America, Southeast Asia, and the Middle East. Due to tariffs and other restrictions, China exports zero EVs to the US and only a limited quantity to the EU. Chinese auto exports have also surged in Russia, filling the void left by Western automobile brands that withdrew following the conflict in Ukraine. A somewhat surprising trend is China's massive and growing trade surplus with Southeast Asia. In 2016, China's trade surplus with the region stood at $80 billion. Over the next 6 years, Chinese exports to Southeast Asia expanded far more rapidly than imports, causing the surplus to more than double, reaching $164 billion in 2023. This is surprising because China and Southeast Asia share considerable overlap in their manufacturing sectors. For instance, both are major producers of textiles. Wages in China are considerably higher than in Southeast Asia. The average urban worker in China earns approximately $800 per month, while their Indonesian counterpart makes around $360 per month, less than half. Given these significantly lower labor costs, one might expect Southeast Asia to be more competitive in producing low-end consumer goods, and consequently, to be a net exporter to China. However, the opposite is true. What explains this apparent contradiction? China's technological advancement has been immense over the past decade. In recent years, China has seen the emergence of dark factories, which utilize a very high degree of automation in manufacturing processes like textile production. These factories are called dark because they can often operate with the lights off, as the automated machinery does not require human vision. Instead of a large workforce of unskilled textile workers, these operations require a much smaller number of skilled technicians to manage and maintain the advanced equipment. This technological edge has enabled Chinese exporters to undercut Southeast Asian competitors on price, even despite higher labor costs. Many Southeast Asian nations now fear that intense competition from China is stifling their own economic development. It was for this very reason that both Indonesia and Vietnam recently banned Tmoo. Even with its rapid economic development, China remains heavily reliant on exports. Its total trade surplus with the rest of the world expanded from $625 billion in 2016 to almost $1 trillion in 2023. This surplus has grown to an unsustainable level, as countries from America to Southeast Asia are increasingly unwilling to absorb China's excess output. Ironically, there is one enormous market that China has thus far failed to adequately penetrate: the 1.4 billion consumers within its own borders. Final consumption accounts for only 55% of China's GDP, meaning that the Chinese populace, in aggregate, consumes just over half of what it produces. In contrast, Americans consume more than 80% of their output. Germany, an export-focused nation, consumes 75% of its production, while India, a developing country, consumes approximately 70%. China's low level of consumption is highly anomalous. So, why is this the case? If China consumes only 55% of what it produces, what happens to the remaining 45%? A portion of this can be attributed to a very high personal savings rate. China lacks a robust social safety net, prompting individuals to save a larger percentage of their income to prepare for job loss or unexpected medical expenses. Chinese citizens are also more inclined to save cash to purchase a home outright rather than obtaining a mortgage, partly due to a less developed banking system and partly due to conservative attitudes towards personal debt. However, the cautious consumer is only part of the explanation. Another issue is that a significant share of China's GDP never actually reaches the pockets of consumers. A large portion of China's GDP is generated by massive state-owned enterprises. These state-owned entities serve two purposes. Firstly, they generate profits for the government, which partially reduces the need for tax revenue. However, this is not their primary objective. The main purpose of state-owned enterprises is to invest in the Chinese economy and further the goals of central planners. To illustrate this, consider the Bank of China, one of the nation's largest state-owned banks. While majority owned by the Chinese government, some of its shares are listed on the Hong Kong Stock Exchange. Each year, when the bank generates a profit, a decision must be made: how much of this profit to distribute to shareholders versus how much to reinvest to expand its loan portfolio. In a typical year, approximately 30% of its profits are returned to shareholders through dividends and share repurchases. In 2020, its shareholder return was actually negative, as new shares were issued to bolster its balance sheet during the pandemic. In contrast, JP Morgan, the largest bank in the US, typically returns 50 to 60% of its profits to shareholders, and in some years, almost all of it. China's state-run banks reinvest their profits to issue loans for new infrastructure projects, factories, and other initiatives aimed at economic growth. These investments boost the economy's productive capacity but also divert money away from consumers. This creates a fundamental mismatch. China possesses immense industrial capacity, yet Chinese consumers lack sufficient purchasing power to buy all of its output. This imbalance explains China's heavy reliance on exports. In an effort to maximize production, Chinese factories have increasingly adopted robotics and automation, reducing the need for human workers. This has led to the unintended consequence of extremely high youth unemployment. Currently, 17% of 16 to 24-year-olds in China are unemployed. This figure actually understates the true scale of the problem, as many young people return to university because they cannot find a job. Full-time students are not included in unemployment statistics. This situation has led to bizarre phenomena in some Chinese cities, where fake office buildings exist, allowing individuals to pay a daily fee to pretend they have a job. Often, Chinese youths migrate from their rural hometowns to attend university in a major city. After graduation, unable to secure employment and unwilling to face the stigma of joblessness, they stage photos of themselves in these fake offices to post on social media, deceiving friends and family into believing they are employed. In the US, 80% of jobs are in the service sector. A service sector job involves anything that does not create a physical product, encompassing roles from waiters to investment bankers to content creators. Service sector jobs are typically not conducive to exporting and therefore rely almost entirely on domestic demand. For the reasons we discussed, China suffers from insufficient domestic demand, leading to a weak services sector. While China has grown wealthier, the number of service jobs has gradually increased, but it still stands at only 46%, which is very low compared to other advanced economies. The growing international opposition to China's industrial overcapacity should serve as a wake-up call. China urgently needs to boost domestic consumption to stimulate service sector employment. This is likely the correct course of action regardless of tariffs, as the ultimate purpose of economic growth is to enhance the living standards of its people. What is the point of constructing a massive industrial capacity if your own citizens cannot afford to enjoy its fruits? The Chinese government recognizes this challenge. In March, they announced several special initiatives aimed at boosting domestic consumption. Some of these plans appear logical, such as increasing the minimum wage and directing state-run banks to issue more personal loans. However, some of their other proposals are frankly perplexing. For example, they state, China will accelerate the development and application of new technologies and products, including autonomous driving, smart wearables, ultra-high-definition video, brain-computer interfaces, robotics, and additive manufacturing, more commonly known as 3D printing, to create new high-growth consumption sectors. They also declare, support will be given to ice and snow resource-rich regions to help them develop into globally recognized winter tourism destinations. If you are interested in reading the full press release, I have included a link in the video description. It is one of the most unusual government press releases I have ever encountered. Their intention to provide subsidies to high-tech industries like robotics and brain-computer interfaces, at least in the short to medium term, will actually reduce consumption as government-funded research and development diverts resources away from consumers. While I am not asserting that subsidizing new technologies is inherently a bad idea, the fact that they are presenting this as a strategy to increase consumption reveals a complete misunderstanding of the underlying problems. Another component of their plan involves promoting domestic tourism to the northern regions of China known for snow and ice. While this might have some potential, the fact that the Politburo is attempting to influence where people take their winter vacations likely indicates that their economic planning is excessively centralized. Alright guys, that concludes this video. What are your thoughts on China's economy in this new era of tariffs? Let us know in the comments section below. As always, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Wall Street Millennial, signing out.